The Eon Sentinel hung in the void, an enormous shadow against the backdrop of a fading sun. Its sleek, iridescent surface shimmered faintly, as though the ship itself breathed in the silence of space. It had been discovered 3 standard months ago by a routine patrol from the Azarvian Coalition, an alliance of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The patrol ship had detected a faint energy signature emanating from the otherwise lifeless system, leading them to this anomaly, a vessel unlike anything they had ever encountered. The ship dwarfed even the largest Azarvian dreadnoughts. Its hull, unmarred by age or damage, appeared to absorb and refract light in a way that defied the laws of physics. Strange glyphs etched into its surface pulsed faintly, but no language in the galaxy's extensive databases matched them. Initial scans revealed no life aboard, no weapons, and no clear source of propulsion. The Sentinel was a ghost ship, perfectly preserved but utterly inert. News of the discovery spread like wildfire across the galaxy, attracting scientists, archaeologists, and opportunists from every corner. It wasn't just the ship's size or beauty that captivated them, it was its mystery. Who had built it? Why was it here? And, most importantly, why did it refuse to respond to any known technology? Teams from the Azarvian Coalition, the Sarath Technocracy, and the United Galactic League all attempted to interface with the vessel, each more confident than the last that they could unlock its secrets. Yet, despite their efforts, the Sentinel remained dormant. For weeks, shuttles swarmed around the ship like insects around a dormant giant. Advanced probes and drones were sent inside through what appeared to be an access hatch, but none could make sense of the ship's systems. Its corridors, vast and labyrinthine, were illuminated by a dim, otherworldly glow. Strange conduits ran along the walls, pulsating gently as though carrying some kind of energy. Yet no amount of prodding, scanning, or hacking yielded results. It was as if the ship were alive, waiting no, refusing to awaken. Elena Collins watched all of this unfold from the observation deck of her own small research vessel, the Orion's Grace. She had arrived weeks after the discovery, drawn not by professional obligation but by curiosity. Elena was a xenotechnologist, specializing in ancient alien artifacts. While she had no illusions about her ability to succeed where the galaxy's brightest minds had failed, something about the Sentinel called to her. It wasn't just the ship's beauty or its mystery, it was the sense that it was deliberate, purposeful, as though it were waiting for someone or something. Elena spent hours reviewing the footage and data gathered by other teams. She pored over scans of the glyphs, comparing them to every known language. While others dismissed them as mere decoration, she became convinced they were a form of communication, a code perhaps, or an interface. The glyphs weren't random, they followed patterns, shifting subtly over time. What if the ship wasn't refusing to respond, she thought, but simply didn't understand what was being asked of it? Her theories were met with skepticism, particularly from the Azarvian scientists. The Azarvians prided themselves on their technological superiority and were quick to dismiss humans as a young, naive species. Their lead scientist, Dr. Mylar Voas, openly ridiculed her ideas during a summit held aboard the Coalition's flagship. "You think the Sentinel is waiting for an emotional connection?" Mylar had scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension. "Perhaps you'd like to sing it a lullaby next." Elena had swallowed her frustration. She knew her ideas were unconventional, even by human standards, but she also knew the ship was different from anything anyone had ever encountered. It didn't fit neatly into the galaxy's understanding of technology. If anything, it defied it. Despite the ridicule, Elena persisted. She requested permission to board the Sentinel and conduct her own experiments, a request that was met with reluctance. The Azarvians, ever wary of humans meddling in their affairs, granted her a single day aboard the ship, under strict supervision. It was a token gesture, more an effort to placate the growing number of human representatives clamoring for equal access than any genuine belief in her capabilities. When the day finally came, Elena stepped aboard the Sentinel with a mix of awe and apprehension. The ship's interior was even more breathtaking than she had imagined. Its corridors were impossibly smooth, as though they had been carved from a single piece of material. Light emanated from the walls themselves, casting a soft golden glow that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. The air was cool but breathable, infused with a faint, metallic scent. She made her way to what the Azarvians had designated the control chamber, a vast, circular room dominated by a single chair in its center. The chair was unlike anything she had ever seen, its surface a seamless blend of metal and organic material. Strange conduits snaked from its base, disappearing into the floor. The chair seemed alive, its surface shimmering faintly as though reacting to her presence. Elena approached cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She placed a hand on the chair's surface, and to her astonishment, it was warm. Not just warm, but inviting, as though it were responding to her touch. Her heart raced as she lowered herself into the chair, half expecting alarms to blare or security systems to activate. Instead, the room remained silent. Then, something extraordinary happened. The glyphs on the walls began to shift, their patterns becoming more intricate. A low hum filled the air, resonating through her very bones. The ship was waking up. Monitors and consoles that had remained dark for centuries flickered to life, displaying data in the same incomprehensible script as the glyphs. Lights danced across the walls, forming shapes and symbols that seemed almost joyful. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the ship, not just around her but within her. It was as though the Sentinel were alive, its consciousness brushing against her own. It wasn't speaking in words, but she understood its meaning, nonetheless recognition. The ship recognized her not as an individual, but as a human. For the first time in millennia, it had found what it was looking for. The Azarvian observers were stunned. They scrambled to record the data, shouting over one another in disbelief. But Elena barely noticed them. She was focused entirely on the connection she felt with the Sentinel. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, and deeply humbling all at once. The ship wasn't just a machine, it was a legacy, a message from an ancient race to the galaxy's future. As the lights dimmed and the hum subsided, Elena knew one thing for certain: the Eon Sentinel had chosen her, and her journey was only beginning. The discovery of Eon Sentinel's awakening under Elena Collins's hands sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The footage of her seated in the alien pilot's chair, the glowing glyphs reacting to her touch, and the dormant ship flickering to life became the most watched transmission across all major networks. While Elena herself felt a deep, personal connection to the event, the galactic powers viewed it through an entirely different lens, one of political tension, scientific curiosity, and a brewing sense of competition. For decades, humans had been considered an emerging species in the galactic arena, innovative, yes, but far from the technological or biological heights of the older races. The Zarvian coalition, the most advanced and influential bloc in the galaxy, had long dismissed humanity as naive explorers prone to impulsiveness. Other civilizations, like the Sarath technocracy, valued humanity's unpredictability but still saw them as a curiosity rather than equals. The idea that humans could be uniquely compatible with an artifact as advanced as the Sentinel was unthinkable. In the wake of Elena's success, the Zarvian coalition convened an emergency summit aboard their flagship, Unity's Crown. Representatives from every major civilization attended, their faces displayed on holographic panels that encircled the vast council chamber. The Zarvian leader, Chancellor Mylar Vios, presided over the gathering, his tall, angular frame a commanding presence at the center of the room. This discovery, Mylar began, his voice calm but heavy with authority, poses questions that challenge our understanding of ancient technology, biology, and interspecies dynamics. It is imperative that we approach this matter with the utmost caution. From her seat at the human delegation's table, Elena listened in silence, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She wasn't technically a diplomat, yet her presence was deemed essential given her role in awakening the Sentinel. Despite her reluctance to step into the political spotlight, she knew this was a battle humanity couldn't afford to lose. A holographic image of the Eon Sentinel hovered above the chamber, its shimmering surface rotating slowly. "The evidence is clear," Mylar continued. "This vessel is of incalculable value. Its activation may hold the key to technologies and knowledge beyond our comprehension. However, the notion that one species alone, particularly one as recent as humanity, could hold exclusive access to it is untenable." The murmurs that rippled through the chamber made it clear that most delegates agreed. Representatives of the Sarath technocracy, the Klovax hive mind, and the Amphorite enclave nodded in solemn agreement. Only the United Galactic League's representative, a stocky alien with a deep, rumbling voice, spoke in humanity's defense. Perhaps the issue is not exclusivity, the OGL delegate countered, his tone measured. Perhaps the Sentinel simply requires something unique, something that, for now, only humans can provide. Denying them further access might risk losing this opportunity altogether. Mylar's gaze shifted to Elena. Dr. Collins, would you care to enlighten us? Why do you believe the ship responded to you? And why do you think it ignored every other attempt? Elena hesitated. The weight of so many eyes, so many expectations, pressed heavily on her shoulders. I don't have all the answers, she admitted. But I believe the Sentinel isn't just a machine. It's something more. I felt its consciousness, or maybe its memory. It wasn't just reacting to my touch, it was recognizing something human. Her words were met with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. The Sarath delegate, a pale, slender being with translucent skin, leaned forward. If what you say is true, then the implications are profound. But it begs the question, what does it mean to be human? And why would the builders of the Sentinel design it to respond to such a specific quality? The debate raged for hours, spiraling into arguments about genetic markers, emotional intelligence, and the potential dangers of allowing humanity to monopolize access to the ship. Elena found herself the center of attention, her every word dissected and analyzed. Yet, despite the hostility, she felt a growing resolve. She wasn't just representing herself, she was representing her entire species. The turning point came when the Zarvians proposed a compromise. If humanity wishes to prove its worthiness, Mylar declared, then let them undergo a series of tests. We will gather representatives from all major civilizations, and each will attempt to interface with the Sentinel under controlled conditions. Should humanity succeed where others fail, we will concede their unique compatibility. The proposal was both an opportunity and a trap. While it offered humanity a chance to solidify its claim, it also invited the scrutiny of the galaxy's finest minds, many of whom were determined to disprove Elena's theory. Nevertheless, the human delegation agreed. Elena had no choice but to become the reluctant champion of her species. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Elena worked tirelessly with her team, analyzing every scrap of data the Sentinel had revealed during her brief connection. The glyphs, she realized, weren't just symbols, they were a language of energy, emotion, and intention. Understanding them required not only intellect but also intuition, a balance of logic and empathy that seemed to come naturally to her. The tests were held in the same system where the Sentinel had been discovered. Each delegation was given access to the ship for precisely 24 hours, during which they could attempt to awaken it using any means at their disposal. Elena watched as team after team approached the task with cold, clinical precision, deploying advanced algorithms and neural interfaces in an attempt to force the ship to respond. None succeeded. When it was humanity's turn, Elena felt the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. She stepped aboard the Sentinel once more, her heart pounding as she approached the pilot's chair. The ship's interior was just as she remembered, silent, serene, and faintly glowing. As she lowered herself into the chair, she closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she had felt before. The ship responded instantly. The glyphs flared to life, their patterns forming intricate, flowing shapes. The low hum returned, resonating through her body like a heartbeat. It wasn't just a response, it was a dialogue. The Sentinel wasn't speaking in words, but Elena understood its message. It recognized her. It trusted her. When she emerged from the ship, the reaction was immediate. The Zarvian scientists, despite their arrogance, couldn't deny the evidence. The other delegations, though reluctant, began to accept that humanity might indeed hold a unique key to the Sentinel's secrets. Yet, even as Elena celebrated this small victory, she couldn't shake the feeling that the ship's message was only the beginning. What was the Sentinel truly waiting for? And why had it chosen her to carry its legacy? These questions lingered in her mind, unanswered but growing ever more urgent. Elena Collins stood on the observation deck of the Orion's Grace, staring out at the Eon Sentinel. The starship loomed in the distance, its shimmering surface reflecting the light of the distant sun. The sight never failed to fill her with awe, but today her mind was clouded with uncertainty. The events of the past weeks had propelled humanity into the galactic spotlight, and with it her own life had changed irrevocably. She had gone from an obscure xenotechnologist to the face of humanity's tenuous claim over the ancient vessel. Yet, despite all the attention, one question haunted her: why had the Sentinel chosen her? The answer, she felt, was buried deep within the ship itself. The glyphs that lit up under her touch, the hum that resonated through her body, the faint but undeniable presence she had sensed during her first interaction, all of it pointed to something far greater than mere technology. But how could she prove it to the rest of the galaxy, let alone to herself? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from the door. "Come in," she called, turning to see Commander Elias Vance step into the room. Elias was the ranking officer aboard the Orion's Grace, and one of the few people Elena trusted implicitly. His presence was steadying, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the political chaos swirling around them. "You've been up here for hours," Elias said, his tone gentle but firm. "The Council is expecting your report on the glyph patterns. Are you ready?" Elena shook her head, a sigh escaping her lips. "I've been analyzing them non-stop, but there's so much we still don't understand. Every time I think I'm close to deciphering their meaning, it's like the patterns shift, adapting to something I can't quite grasp." Elias crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. "You're too hard on yourself. No one else has gotten even this far. The fact that the ship responds to you at all is a miracle." "It's not just about the ship responding," Elena replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "It's about understanding why. If we can't figure that out, we'll never unlock its full potential. And if we can't do that, the Council will take it away from us." Elias frowned but said nothing. He knew better than to argue when she was in this state. Instead, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You'll figure it out. You always do." His confidence was comforting, but it didn't dispel the weight of responsibility Elena felt. After Elias left, she turned back to the viewport, the glyphs she had seen during her last session aboard the Sentinel replaying in her mind. The patterns weren't just symbols, they were alive, fluid, almost musical in their rhythm. What if the key wasn't in deciphering them as a language, but in understanding them as a form of expression? The thought lingered with her as she made her way to the docking bay. Today she would be returning to the Sentinel for another session, this time under the scrutiny of a combined team of Zarvian and Sarath scientists. The Council had mandated their presence to ensure transparency, but Elena knew their true purpose was to find a way to replicate her connection to the ship. The idea of being watched so closely made her uneasy, but she had no choice. As her shuttle approached the Sentinel, the ship's surface seemed to ripple, as though acknowledging her presence. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Elena felt it in her gut. The moment she stepped aboard, the atmosphere changed. The air was cool and still, yet charged with an energy that seemed to hum just beneath the surface. She made her way to the control chamber, the now familiar pilot's chair waiting for her at the center. The Zarvian and Sarath scientists followed at a distance, their instruments at the ready. Elena ignored them, focusing entirely on the chair. As she settled into it, the glyphs on the walls began to glow, their patterns shifting in a hypnotic dance. The hum returned, resonating through her body, and for a brief moment she felt as though the ship itself was embracing her. Then came the voice. It wasn't a voice in the traditional sense, no words, no sound. It was a presence, a sensation that filled her mind with images and emotions. She saw flashes of a world bathed in golden light, its skies teeming with ships that bore the same sleek design as the Sentinel. She felt a profound sense of loss, as though something precious had been taken away. And then she felt recognition, a warmth that seemed to say, "You are the one." Elena's breath caught in her throat. She had suspected the Sentinel was more than just a machine, but this was something else entirely. It was alive, or at least some part of it was. The realization sent a shiver down her spine, but it also filled her with resolve. If the ship was trying to communicate, she had to find a way to understand. "Dr. Collins, what's happening?" One of the Zarvian scientists demanded, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Elena opened her eyes, the glyphs still glowing brightly around her. "It's reaching out," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's trying to tell me something." The scientists exchanged skeptical glances, their instruments buzzing with activity. Elena ignored them, closing her eyes once more. She focused on the presence, willing herself to connect with it. The images returned, this time more vivid. She saw the builders of the Sentinel, tall, graceful beings with luminous skin and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the cosmos. They worked tirelessly, their every action imbued with purpose. And then she saw the fall, a great calamity, a darkness that spread across their world, consuming everything in its path. The builders fought valiantly, their technology far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, but it wasn't enough. In their final moments, they imbued the Sentinel with their essence, a last desperate attempt to preserve their legacy. Elena's heart ached with the weight of their sacrifice. She realized now that the ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a repository of their culture, their history, their very souls. And it had chosen her to carry that legacy forward. When she opened her eyes, the glyphs had dimmed, their patterns fading back into stillness. The hum subsided, leaving the chamber eerily quiet. The scientists bombarded her with questions, their skepticism replaced by a mix of curiosity and unease. But Elena barely heard them. Her mind was consumed by what she had seen, and by the enormity of the task that lay ahead. As she returned to the Orion's grace, Elena knew her journey was far from over. The Sentinel had given her a glimpse of its secrets, but it had also made one thing clear: humanity's role in the galaxy was about to change, and she was at the center of it all. Elena Collins sat in her quarters aboard the Orion's grace, the events of the day replaying in her mind. Her connection to the Eon Sentinel was undeniable now, but the weight of that connection pressed heavily on her shoulders. The images she had seen, the builders, their fall, their desperate attempt to preserve their legacy, felt like a burden she wasn't sure she was ready to bear. The ship had chosen her, yes, but for what purpose? And what would it demand of her in the days to come? The soft hum of the ship's engines was a constant backdrop as she sifted through the data from her latest session aboard the Sentinel. The Zarvian and Sarath scientists had reluctantly shared their findings, though their skepticism lingered in every word. They couldn't deny the ship's response to her, but they still clung to the belief that it was a fluke, an anomaly that could be explained away with enough analysis. Elena knew better. The Sentinel wasn't a machine to be dissected and understood in pieces. It was a living entity, its consciousness woven into every facet of its design. Her thoughts were interrupted by a chime from her communicator. She glanced at the screen to see Commander Elias Vance's face, his expression as serious as ever. "Elena," he said, his tone urgent. "We've received a message from the Council. They're requesting an emergency meeting tomorrow. Apparently the Zarvians have found something, and they're saying it changes everything." Elena's heart sank. "Do you know what it is?" Elias shook his head. "No details yet, but knowing them, it's not good. Be ready." The call ended, leaving Elena with a sense of foreboding. She spent the rest of the evening reviewing her notes, trying to anticipate what these Zarvians might have uncovered. The glyphs, the images, the faint voice of the ship, everything felt connected, but the puzzle was still incomplete. The following day, the Council convened aboard the Zarvian flagship, Unity's Crown. The chamber was packed with delegates, their faces tense as the Zarvian scientists took the floor. Dr. Mylar Voas, the Zarvian lead, stood at the center, a holographic projection of the Eon Sentinel rotating above him. After extensive analysis, Mylar began, his voice measured but laced with smugness. "We have uncovered new evidence regarding the nature of the Sentinel and its builders. This evidence raises serious concerns about the ship's activation and its potential consequences for the galaxy." The projection shifted, displaying a series of glyphs alongside a series of translated phrases. Elena leaned forward, her breath catching as she recognized the patterns. They were similar to the glyphs she had seen during her sessions aboard the Sentinel, but these translations suggested something darker. "These glyphs," Mylar continued, "appear to be a warning. They describe a calamity, a great unmaking that the builders sought to contain. The Sentinel was not merely a vessel, it was a failsafe, a weapon of last resort designed to combat this threat. However, the activation of the ship also carries a risk that the calamity itself could be unleashed." The chamber erupted in murmurs, the delegates exchanging uneasy glances. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The images she had seen, the sense of loss and desperation, had the Sentinel shown her the calamity Mylar was describing? And if so, why had it chosen her to reactivate it? Mylar raised a hand, silencing the crowd. We believe that the ship's choice of a human operator is not coincidental. The builders of the Sentinel likely designed it to respond to specific traits: emotional resonance, adaptability, creativity, all traits that humans exhibit in abundance. However, this also makes humanity a potential liability. If the Sentinel is indeed a weapon, its activation by an inexperienced operator could have catastrophic consequences. Elena stood, her voice cutting through the murmurs. You're twisting the narrative, Mylar. The Sentinel isn't just a weapon, it's a repository of knowledge, a legacy of a civilization that wanted to preserve its wisdom and protect the galaxy. The calamity you're describing may be real, but the ship's purpose is to prevent it, not cause it. Mylar turned to her, his expression cold. And what makes you so certain, Dr. Collins? Your personal connection to the ship? Your unverified visions? Science demands evidence, not sentiment. The tension in the room was palpable. Elena felt the weight of every eye on her, the skepticism, the fear. But she also felt the Sentinel's presence, a faint but steady reassurance that she wasn't alone. I've seen what the Sentinel is capable of, she said, her voice firm. It's more than a weapon. It's a bridge, a connection to a civilization that understood the balance between destruction and creation. If we dismiss its potential out of fear, we'll be losing something far greater than any of us can comprehend. The council deliberated for hours, the debate swinging back and forth. Some delegates sided with Mylar, arguing for caution and containment. Others supported Elena, calling for further exploration and understanding. By the end of the session, no consensus had been reached, and the fate of the Sentinel remained uncertain. As the delegates filed out, Elias caught up with Elena, his expression grim. They're scared, he said, and scared people make bad decisions. If Mylar convinces them to shut the Sentinel down, we'll lose everything. Elena nodded, her mind racing. She couldn't let that happen. The Sentinel had chosen her for a reason, and she was determined to uncover the truth. But to do that, she needed more time, and she needed to go deeper into the ship's secrets. That night, she returned to the Sentinel, her heart pounding as she stepped into the control chamber. The glyphs greeted her like old friends, their light pulsing gently as she approached the pilot's chair. As she settled into the seat, she closed her eyes, focusing on the presence she had felt before. This time the connection was immediate. The images returned, more vivid than ever. She saw the builders working tirelessly to complete the Sentinel, their faces etched with determination and sorrow. She saw the calamity, a swirling darkness that consumed everything in its path. And then she saw something new, a glimmer of hope, a spark of light that seemed to pierce the darkness. The voice returned, clearer now, its message unmistakable: you are the key. Elena opened her eyes, her resolve solidifying. The Sentinel wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a beacon for the future. And whatever lay ahead, she knew she had to be ready. Elena Collins stood at the threshold of the Eon Sentinel's control chamber, the weight of her decisions pressing heavily on her shoulders. The glyphs along the walls pulsed faintly, as though sensing her hesitation. The chamber was silent save for the hum of energy that seemed to emanate from the very core of the ship. She knew that this time would be different. The Sentinel had chosen her, but the ship's final purpose, the truth of its creation, and the legacy it carried were still shrouded in mystery. Today she would find those answers. The Galactic Council's indecision had left her with little choice. After days of deliberation, the Zarvian coalition had moved to suspend all further interaction with the Sentinel, arguing that the risks outweighed the potential rewards. Their insistence on control, coupled with fear of the unknown, had driven a wedge between humanity and the other races. If she didn't act now, the Sentinel would be locked away, its secrets buried for eternity. She approached the pilot's chair with purpose, her heart pounding. As she lowered herself into the seat, the glyphs flared to life, their intricate patterns shifting in a mesmerizing dance. The hum deepened, resonating through her body like a heartbeat. She closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she had felt before, and the presence of the Sentinel enveloped her once more. This time the connection was stronger, more immediate. Images flooded her mind, fragments of a story told across millennia. She saw the builders again, their luminous forms moving with grace and determination. They were not just engineers, they were visionaries, philosophers, and protectors. They had created the Sentinel not merely as a weapon or a failsafe, but as a vessel of hope, a bridge between their civilization and whatever came after. The calamity was more vivid now, its shape and form clearer than ever before. It was not a natural disaster or an enemy army, but something far more insidious, a force of entropy, a corruption that consumed energy, life, and meaning itself. The builders had fought valiantly, but they had known from the beginning that their efforts would only delay the inevitable. In their final act, they had poured their collective knowledge, their very essence, into the Sentinel, entrusting it to find those who could succeed where they had failed. Elena gasped as the images shifted. She saw glimpses of the galaxy as it was now, the many races that had risen and fallen since the builders' time. She saw humanity, its resilience, its adaptability, and its profound capacity for both destruction and creation. The Sentinel had been searching for eons, and it had finally found what it was looking for. Not just a pilot, but a partner, a species capable of carrying its legacy forward. The voice of the Sentinel returned, clearer than ever, filling her mind with a sense of urgency. The calamity was not destroyed. It lies dormant, waiting to rise again. You must be ready. Her breath quickened as she realized the magnitude of what was being asked of her. The Sentinel wasn't just a relic to be studied or a tool to be used, it was a call to action. Humanity had been chosen not because of its superiority, but because of its potential. The qualities that other races dismissed as recklessness or unpredictability were precisely what the builders had sought: creativity, emotional depth, and the willingness to take risks. As the images faded, the glyphs on the walls shifted once more, their patterns coalescing into a map of the galaxy. A single point glowed brightly, far beyond the reach of any known star system. The Sentinel was guiding her, showing her the location of the calamity's dormant core. It was a place of unimaginable danger, but also the key to stopping the corruption before it could spread again. Elena, a voice broke through her reverie. She turned to see Commander Elias Vance standing at the entrance to the chamber, his face a mixture of concern and determination. The Council's orders just came through. They're sending a team to deactivate the Sentinel. If we're going to act, it has to be now. She nodded, her resolve hardening. The Sentinel gave me a location. It's showing me where the calamity can be stopped. But we can't do this alone. We'll need a crew, a coalition of the best from every race. If the Council wants proof that the Sentinel is more than just a weapon, this is it. Elias hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I'll handle the Council. You focus on the ship. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Elena and her team worked tirelessly to prepare the Sentinel for its first true voyage in millennia. The ship seemed to respond to her every command, its systems coming online as though it had been waiting for this moment. The glyphs along the walls glowed brighter, their patterns stabilizing into a language she was beginning to understand. As the crew assembled aboard the ship, Elena addressed them in the control chamber. Representatives from the Azarvian Coalition, the Sarath Technocracy, the United Galactic League, and humanity stood side by side, their expressions a mix of apprehension and determination. The Sentinel chose us, she began, her voice steady. Not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because together we have what it takes to face what's coming. This isn't just about humanity or any one race. This is about the galaxy, our galaxy, and the legacy we want to leave for those who come after us. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment there was silence. Then, one by one, the crew members nodded, their resolve matching her own. As the Sentinel powered up, its engines emitting a deep, resonant hum, Elena took her place in the pilot's chair. The glyphs formed a final pattern, one that she understood instinctively. It was a message, a promise from the builders: you are the hope we could not be. Go forth and create the future. The ship shuddered as it began to move, its massive form slipping effortlessly into the void. The stars stretched and blurred as the Sentinel entered hyperspace, its destination clear. Elena felt a surge of determination, her fear giving way to a deep, unshakable purpose. The calamity lay ahead, but so did the chance to shape a new destiny for humanity, for the galaxy, and for the legacy of those who had come before. As the ship raced toward its destination, Elena knew one thing for certain: the Eon Sentinel was no longer a relic of the past. It was a beacon of hope, and its journey was only just beginning.